I'm joined now by Judiciary Committee member, U.S. Congressman Steve Cohen of Tennessee, Eli Stokols, White House reporter for the Los Angeles Times, Cynthia Axte's a former federal prosecutor, David Jolly, a former Republican member of Congress. Let me go to Cynthia on this question. I think we saw an example today. This will drive the members of Congress crazy, but it's true. This counsel did a hell of a good job.
He did a great job. I could be a groupie by the end of the day.
But he got to Lewandowski to admit on camera for the world, I don't tell the truth, when he was interviewed on MSNBC.
He got him to admit basically that he was a liar, that he was proud about it, that he was a liar. He got him to admit that he had a motive to deliver this message because he was trying to get a job at the White House. Lewandowski tried to, use that shield of whatever the White House said, and he pulled out Lewandowski's book and read him sections of it, so he had to admit that he had the motive to try to do Trump's bidding so he could get the job. It was masterful. It was done with first with a sledgehammer and then a scalpel.
Congressman Steve Cohen, thank you, because I think Americans can understand things from movies more than life sometimes. And what it reminded me of, sending Lewandowski over to the Attorney General's office to meet with him outside the building, it's almost like sending Tom Hagen to the prisoner to talk to Johnny Five Angels and tell him, we got the goods on you. We got your brother in court. I'm telling you, it looked like a mob kind of operation. Why would the President of the United States use a henchman, Lewandowski, to go to the Attorney General off campus and tell him to drop the case against him, or he was going to get fired himself? That seems like mob behavior and a hitman at work. Your thoughts?
Well, everybody else in the administration who was a character, Mr. McGahn and even Attorney General Sessions, refused to do what the president asked. Sessions refused to recuse himself. McGahn refused to go and try to in the investigation and tell him to fire the special counsel. But Lewandowski is somebody that was the enforcer. He was, admittedly, he was a loyal soldier. That's what he did. So Trump knew that this was a guy he could get to go do his dirty work. And in essence, he was his Luca Brasi. And he went to him and told him to do the deal.
Sir, how could this not be obstruction of justice?
It is obstruction of justice. We saw obstruction of Congress, which was the third charge in the Nixon impeachment today, with Lewandowski's refusal to cooperate to Stonewall and to Stamber and him and Hall, and that was obstruction of Congress. And then the obstruction of justice was obviously when he went to Sessions. The message was to say, just do this for future presidents and not for me. That's obstruction of justice. So we showed obstruction of Congress and obstruction of justice, and we showed the Republicans the only wanting to do is to buttress Lewandowski and not try to get to the truth of the matter at all.
Well, here's how the Democrats counsel Barry, what's his last? Burke. And I didn't know him. Pressed Lewandowski about.
Barry Burke did the best impression of Mike Wallace. He made Mike Wallace, the great Mike Wallace show.
Well, he certainly was a Perry Mason, if nothing else. Anyway, here's how the Democrats counsel Barry Burke pressed Lewandowski about why he didn't want a paper trail of his meeting with Jeff Sessions.
Having a casual dinner with the Attorney General has nothing to do with why you wouldn't want a public log of your visit with the Attorney General, does it?
It does.
So isn't it a fact you didn't want a public log because you knew what you're doing was wrong? So that just as the president went to an unofficial non-government employee, you wanted to make sure there was not a record of it. Isn't that right, sir?
No.
Eli Stokols, what's your thoughts about this in terms of news value? What's coming out of this at this late time? It's almost the fourth quarter of the investigation of the president's conduct with the Russians and his obstruction of justice.
Well, I mean, the president was initially cheering Corey Lewandowski's opening statement and the way that he started out this hearing, which was obvious to everybody that he went in there looking for a fight. He was performing for the president, the audience of one that we always talk about. The president praised him for doing that. This is a guy who's trying to run for Senate in New Hampshire and who, during a recess, tweeted out a link to his Senate campaign committee telling people to follow him. So his motivation here and the fact that he was planning on stonewalling, planning on making a spectacle and a contentious fight here on television, his moment to demonstrate his loyalty to the president, that was all going really well. What happened in the last hour came after 3-4 hours of testimony. And so the question, I haven't had time to touch base with people inside the White House to report out what the president thinks of the last hour, but I'm going to guess that they are not as pleased with Corey Lewandowski being exposed, obviously, as somebody who's willing to lie to the press and being caught in those lies by a very skilled questioner. I think the saving grace for the White House might be the fact that, all these fights are going to break along partisan lines, and they believe that maybe after several hours, a lot of people weren't tuned in to see
Dave
it.
Jolly, I don't think that was a great analysis. David, I don't think the president's ever been stupid enough. He's not a stupid guy to say I lie. This guy went out there having hot dogged it for about an hour or two, selling his book and having the time of his life up there, enjoying it like at the end zone, like he kicked 3 touchdowns or something. And here's the guy caught up in a lie right on television, which will never go away. He will always be the guy who said, I lied for Trump.
Chris, an hour after, as Eli said, announcing his New Hampshire Senate bid, he announces to the world that he's a liar. I mean, he confirmed for the world today, Corey Lewandowski did, that he lies to the American people, and he's asking to be a part of the United States Senate. That works in Trump's GOP, but I think New Hampshire Republicans are smarter than that. What he also provided, though, Chris, was confirmation today, clearly amidst all the circus, to Hank Johnson, that the President of the United States instructed him to commit obstruction of justice. And this is one of those hearings where the transcript, the written transcript, will be much more damning than some of the things Lewandowski actually said. Lewandowski gave House Judiciary Committee what they needed today for an article of impeachment against the President of the United States for obstruction of justice. And what he also did, and Nadler kept the hearing open subject to the call of the chair, Lewandowski impugned himself. In that written transcript, we will see that he impugned his word to Mueller and the committee, and we saw that through the staff counsel's questioning at the end of the day.
Well, he may have already done it way back when he was interviewed under oath with the Mueller investigation, right?
Right. I mean, there's lots of information in the Mueller report.
The record that he said, I went out and did this for the president?
Right. The obstruction of justice was there in the Mueller report. But Barry Burke was able to bring it to life, and then he could add this truth about Lewandowski, that he was a liar, and he actually brought it to life because he brought in the motive of why he would have tried to do this for the president, and that was really important. The big shame of the day was that Burke wasn't the one doing the questioning first. That's what should have
happened. He didn't get elected. That's the problem.
Wait, but Nadler should know. This should be his lesson.
We know who the star is tonight. Anyway, from the outset of the hearing today, Lewandowski cited a letter from the White House directing him not to answer questions about his conversations with Trump. And his refusal to cooperate today led to some heated reactions from members of the committee. Democrats, let's watch them.
Did the president tell you that Sessions had already said no? Volume 2, page 107?
Again, Congresswoman, I recognize that the privilege is not mine, but I've been asked by the White House to... Congresswoman, I'd be happy to answer your question, or you can just have a conversation by yourself. But if you'd like to ask me a question, I'll be happy to answer.
I'm going to continue. The reason is
well, then don't ask me a question if you don't want to hear my answer.
I'm reclaiming my time. This is a House judiciary, not a House party.
The White House has directed that I not disclose the substance of any discussions with the President or his advisors to protect executive branch confidentiality.
You're not going to stonewall me in my questioning.
Well, multiple outlets reported in advance that Lewandowski intended to use his platform today as a launching pad for a United States Senate bid up in New Hampshire, as said moments ago. And that's the state that Donald Trump narrowly lost to Hillary Clinton by just 0.3% in 2016. To that end of his campaign, we heard Lewandowski repeatedly echo the president's talking points. He's running as a Trump surrogate or stand-in up in New Hampshire, attacking the investigation today at every turn.
The American people continue to be sold a false narrative with the purpose of undermining the legitimacy of the 2016 election results. I think that this fake Russia collusion narrative is the greatest crime committed against the American people in our generation, if not ever.
Do you have a thought as to why we continue to engage in a charade that is overwhelmingly opposed by the American people and fundamentally misunderstood by my Democrat colleagues?
You know, Congressman, I think they hate this president more than they love their country.
Congressman Steve Cohen, you're a politician. What do you think of the Republican politics today? It seems like they went in there with that speech ready.
They were, and Gates set him up and wanted that statement. But I think that it backfired on him. I thought they looked terrible. You had Doug Collins trying to get Trump's support to make him senator from Georgia, and you had Lewandowski trying to get the Senate's position in New Hampshire. 3 weeks ago, we had a guy trying to get appointed to the security position, and he failed. So we really have Republicans auditioning to Trump for jobs. They failed. They couldn't support their position, and they've got a situation where obstruction of justice was put in their face and obstruction of Congress as well.
Well, it was a good day for the U.S. Congress. Anyway, when asked about the communications between the Russians and George Papadopoulos, Lewandowski acknowledged that he believed the outreach was from a potential foreign agent to a Trump policy advisor. But he said it was not up to him to alert the FBI. That, he said, was the job of Papadopoulos' boss, Sam Clovis.
Did you report these incidences to the FBI?
I did not. I did not see that outreach to me as an offer to interfere with the outcome of the election.
What did you see it as?
I saw an outreach from a potential foreign agent to a policy advisor, and that's why I asked him to get in touch with Mr. Clovis.
I mean, for the safety, just to be on the safe side, wouldn't you call the FBI and say, hey, these guys are calling us, please check it out?
You know, I think in hindsight, it's something that Mr. Clovis probably should have done.
David, let's talk about the American people who will watch this on the news tonight. If they didn't watch it live like we did, what will be the reaction to them? Will they say maybe there's some life left in this impeachment effort, or will they say this is pretty awful that a toady of the president's, a body man, I think his job was in the campaign, was given the job of going from the President of the United States to the Attorney General of the United States, telling him to call off the dogs, to call off the Mueller investigation, or be fired. This is mob behavior, and this guy did it, the guy we're looking at right now. Your thoughts? What's the American people going to, are they just tired of this issue to the point they cannot be reawakened to what we're talking about?
Well, I think they need political leadership to frame the clarity around this. And, Chris, to your point, it was a perfectly Trumpian moment. Right? I mean, here's Lewandowski basically testifying to, as you said, mob-like behavior, acting like the tough guy until he gets caught. And then he's the weak man who has to point the finger at a colleague and blame somebody else, showing a complete irreverence for the truth, also a Trumpian tenet, if you will, surrounded by Republicans. And we have to put this in context, Chris. Once again, every time there's a pivotal hearing like this, House Republicans, here they are presented by somebody who is testified that the president instructed him to obstruct justice, and not a single House Republican cares to ask him about that. They simply do the president's bidding. To your point, Chris, it is up to Democratic leadership, unfortunately, to have to frame the truth for the American people, because Republicans will not do that. The onus is on Democrats to lead the American people in this moment.
We have what's just described then by David, formerly known as a Republican, a description of the modern Republican Party. The president, who's the only person that matters in that party, intellectually, politically, morally, apparently, amorally, has given him a award of excellence for what he did today.
Right. And that's why he has immunity to go and do that. They watch the Kavanaugh hearing. They look at this and they, you know, there's no consequence. These are elected officials. And to stay elected in the Republican Party right now is to stay on this president's good side. It's really that simple. These are not tech CEOs, auto executives, cigarette manufacturers going before Congress with something to lose in the marketplace. In the political marketplace, the calculation for Republicans is stay with the president. And it's the reason that Corey Lewandowski can go in there today and basically, you know, thumb his nose at the entire process. The only saving grace for Democrats is the fact that in the last hour, they were able to really expose some of the holes in his story and put him on the defensive, because for the first several hours, it was you know, I don't think Democrats are really getting what they wanted out of that hearing.
It's Al Capone stuff. Thank you, U.S. Congressman Steve Cohen of Tennessee, Eli Stokols, the LA Times, Cynthia Axtey with all her expertise, and David Jolly, formerly known as a Republican.